Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Turn that music down. You'll recognize that as Holst, Mars, the bringer of war. Although we're not going to be talking about Mars today, we're going to be talking about another red object that synchronistically came up again today. We'll just go through the whole story. I'm going to call this one Our Happy Homey Little Red Rubber Ball, a song for the apocalypse and the singing of synchronicity. Okay, where are we going with this? Well, this morning, just to give you a little background, it's been a while since I put up a podcast. Reason being that we've been in Bandung, spending about the last week and a half with family there, and I didn't bring my normal computer along, my desktop. I only bring an old laptop that proved to be relatively unuseful because we didn't have Wi-Fi there and only a mobile connection anyway. I took kind of an enforced vacation, so a lot of ideas have been brewing. And this morning I woke up thinking I was going to be talking about Egypt, the real history of Egypt, but that programming was preempted by my attempting to answer a question on Quora. For those of you who aren't aware, just follow my channel here or found your way here another way. I do a lot of posting on Quora. To questions that relate to spiritual and spiritual slash political slash economic questions that I feel more qualified than most to comment on. Okay, so this morning I woke up and I saw a question on Quora that kind of intrigued me and brought to mind was basically a question from somebody asking about a synchronicity that they experienced and asking if anybody had anything to contribute to it. So let's just go to this question and I'll tell you the story about what happened this morning that caused me to make a whole episode around this question. Oops, that's a different one I was working on. Let's get back to the question at hand. Okay, so here's the question I found this morning that sparked this whole episode. The question was, what is the spiritual meaning in finding two clear red hand-blown glass marbles within a month of each other and in separate locations? I'll read you the reply that I ended up posting, but actually this is only a small piece of the reply that I'd intended to post. And that's why I ended up doing a whole episode on it, because the post I intended to make, for some reason, the powers that be on the internet wouldn't let me make it. The first time I tried to post it, my whole computer crashed. And when I got the computer back up and started typing again, the tab that I was working within crashed. When I kept on investigating this, I discovered that while I was away in Bandung, a dark version of my favorite browser, Firefox, had been enabled. I don't know, installed and enabled, or just enabled. Maybe it was lurking as a Trojan horse on my system, and it had been turned on. And this dark version of Firefox had a plausibly deniable bug in it that caused it to chew up more and more memory very quickly till it basically was using all the memory of the system and caused Windows and or the system to crash. And this is a behavior that I understand well because of my background in computer programming. This is what happens when you have what's called a memory leak in a program, which happens, but you don't generally expect things to get released with memory leaks that grow to gigabytes in seconds, which is what this one was doing. So I'm pretty sure that this was malware, and I know where that malware originates because I know what is behind all of this nasty stuff that's going on with the folks that want to control your internet, want to program what you see, when you see, how you see it, and allow you to react only in the way that supports their narrative. And if you've not experienced the fun of shadow banning or this kind of Trojan horse attack, well, get ready because it's probably going to be coming to you as soon as you start fighting the adversary. Okay, so let's read the reply I put, and then we'll start talking about what I was going to write in full. I wrote, I'm not sure what your synchronicity is meant to tell you, but I had similar synchronicities myself a few years ago, and I may be able to add some pieces to your puzzle by relating my story. Back in 2019, during a very difficult dark night of the soul phase of my awakening, I became aware of an old song that I had never heard before, despite it being a big hit in my early childhood. It was the song Red Rubber Ball, a Paul Simon lyric made famous by a one-hit wonder band called The Circle, who also had some interesting support from the Beatles in their short-lived rise to fame. Here are the lyrics. And we'll look at the lyrics in a second. The history of this song makes for some interesting research into the influence of pop culture on present times and likely future times. I originally gravitated to the song because I've been going through the worst betrayal breakup of my life, the impetus, in fact, of my accelerated spiritual awakening. And the upbeat message about finding new starfish in the sea helped me deal with the worst of depressions. That, and I started encountering red rubber balls all over the place, finding first a real red rubber ball in the yard of the place I was living at the time, then a red croquet ball in an old box I decided to finally unpack after a dozen moves, etc. Constantly reinforcing that the song was somehow tied to my spiritual path, and we'll look at that in more detail. That's about the point at which my original answer started blowing up in the ways I've described. I later found deeper end times meaning in the song that led me to many discoveries of other hidden prophecy in modern songs and movies. When I was typing this part, it was trying to crash. It took me about an hour and a half to get this last paragraph in and close out this message. I had written more here, but every time I tried to post further details of my story, my computer either froze or the Quora tab crashed. I guess this must be an important revelation, therefore, so I'm going to do a whole podcast with the rest of the story on my channel, The Honest Hour, today. Dark gods of big tech hive mind control willing. Battling the adversary of all creation isn't easy these days, but once you know their attacks mean they are scared, you just laugh and push their buttons some more. Okay, so let's go back and let's look at this song of the Synchronicity. Maybe it will pull something out for you. I'll tell you what it meant for me and what it's come to mean, and how it sort of became one of the marching songs of my spiritual awakening. Okay, I'm going to switch over to YouTube here and pause the music I have in the background and switch over here. And yes, you should be seeing, let's see. So this is the song Red Rubber Ball. Playing on YouTube. I'm not breaking anybody's copyright. I'm just showing something on my screen that is, you can show on your screen if you want to. Okay, so that's the song that sparked today's episode. So let's talk about the red sun. When is the sun red? Well, there's 2 times that the sun is red normally. There's actually an old, there's an old sailor's, I didn't put a background on that one. You're seeing my humble room behind me there. There's an old sailor's rhyme about red sun that goes, red sun at morning, sailors take warning, red sun at night, sailors delight. It turns out that the patterns of weather, at least in the northern hemisphere, are such that if you see a red sun in the morning, it means that there is a storm, low pressure zone coming that's going to attract winds and moisture and create a storm. If you see it at night in the northern hemisphere, it means that the storm has passed. It's the motion of the earth is such that the storm is now past you as the earth rotates. Now there's other times where you see a red sun. The red sun is actually a facet of basically the atmospheric conditions that the sun's rays have to go through. When the sun is directly overhead and the sky is clear, we see a yellow sun. If we don't go blind looking at it, because with that much direct sunlight, it's quite harmful to human eyes. So we generally have to put a filter over it to actually observe the sun directly. If the sun is lying low in the sky, it's going through the atmosphere obliquely, and there are more things that can affect it. This is why some of the most beautiful times for the sun are at sunrise and sunset, because it's passing through a lot of atmosphere and a lot of clouds, and you get really beautiful effects like this red sun over the sea behind me. In addition, you will have a red sun or other colored sun depending on particulates in the atmosphere. And in fact, there have been times in our planet's history where the sun has been many different colors depending on what was going on, what had just happened, what was in the atmosphere at that given time. And the red sun was also a warning, if it persisted for many days, of some event having happened on this planet that probably was not good for anyone. And so it was seen as sort of a harbinger of apocalypse, if you will. And that's, I think, where this song originates from. If you look at the background of this Red Rubber Ball song, think about it. Okay, now it equates the sun to a red rubber ball. If you know anything about these red rubber balls, they bounce and bounce and bounce. You know, they used to call it a super ball when I was a kid. I'm not sure what they call it now, but they still sell these balls whose elastic properties are such that they bounce for a long time before they come to rest. And this bouncing of the ball is like the symbology of the rising and falling of the sun, which is the symbology that is behind many religions of rebirth and repetition. So many religions have a messianic tradition, which is a tradition of a God dying and being reborn. And that is, in earliest incarnation, associated with the sun. Now, it can also be associated with the moon, because the moon has phases, and sometimes it disappears, and sometimes it reappears, and sometimes it has eclipses. It makes for some more interesting variations of the Messiah story, if you will. And every religion has some version of this story. The Hindus have a version that says, well, everything reincarnates, goes through death, birth, reincarnation, and it's an endless cycle. And many Buddhist cults and Hindu cults see that as something bad that you need to escape from. I want to get off the wheel of karma. And this was kind of the popular trope in the time that this song was popularized. I don't know exactly when it was written, but it was first released on an album by this band called The Circle in, let's put the background music on, I like to have inspiration, in 1966. The band broke up in 1968, as they frequently do. After getting a lot of support, they actually were touring with the Beatles. They were that up and coming, and the Beatles actively promoted them. In fact, it was John Lennon who suggested their name spelled the way it was. Circle, spelled C-Y-R-K-L-E. Interesting. I'm not going to go digging any more there, because there may be some more synchronicities, some more interesting tidbits. I leave it to you, if that intrigues you, to go look for your synchronicities there. What I want to emphasize is how these things work, how synchronicities happen, how synchronicities lead to other synchronicities, and how to deal with them. Now, today, I didn't let the powers getting in my way get in my way. I didn't keep trying to post that Quora answer. I decided, you know what? If it's that important to somebody, I'm going to do a whole episode and talk about it and talk about what I've learned through this process. The other pieces of this song that I think are important is the idea that the red rubber ball is kind of like the old pattern of interpreting creation. Now, like I said, in the Buddhist Hindu tradition, their idea is that, okay, it's cyclical. You keep being reborn until you escape the wheel of karma, and you get to go to nirvana or heaven or whatever the particular belief is. In the Christian tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, the idea is that only God needs to be reborn. You need a Messiah to come, and then the Messiah is going to take everybody to heaven, and rah, 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 we win, and all the servants of the adversary, which is anybody who doesn't believe religion the way you do or ever done you wrong, goes to the other place. Pretty simplistic idea. And most popular religions are based upon very simplistic, narcissistic, selfish ideas. This is another reason why I think I had all these synchronicities come up right now, because we're in the midst of seeing what that does to our species with this Hamas attack on Israel, which is polarizing and activating and causing all kinds of fear and hate and all these dark emotions to appear in our species on both sides, and encouraging those who have picked the non-duality route to say, oh, well, I'm too high vibration to get involved in that. I'm not even going to pay any attention to it because it's all an illusion. I'm just going to continue having fun in my God masturbation fantasy until I get to rejoin Source, which is another popular narcissistic fantasy that we see today. No more healthy than active partisanship. If you can sit by and watch tyranny happen, watch children being slaughtered, beheaded, watch retaliation that kills other children, and not want to get involved in stopping children from getting killed by hateful power mongers. And that's what's on both sides. That's what drives all hate, is people who think if only a whole world was run by me, everything would be perfect. And anybody who doesn't believe that is an enemy, an infidel. Every religion has that aspect. That's what drives people away from religion into an even worse religion of narcissistic atheism. And this is the religion that is basically behind what people have come to call the woke cult. The virtue signaling Me Too religion that makes people feel good because they say, yeah, when somebody says what they want them to think in their echo chamber, and attack anybody that says anything different. And that politically correct echo chamber changes with the changing winds, the changing tides of basically the best funded media. Whoever throws the most money into the media machine gets to set the narrative. And I think most people who have been watching for a while and are very observant have noticed that the narrative changes. One day, you're told that the Palestinians are the heroes and they're oppressed and they're living in an open-air prison and, oh, we need to end Israel and blah, blah, blah. And the next moment, you're being shown images of them slicing heads off babies and attacking peaceful music festivals, and that old narrative becomes untenable, and all of a sudden you're being sold something new. And you know, this is how media works. They want to get eyeballs. They don't care how they get them. They want to have the most eyeballs. And this is essentially the same modus operandi of the adversary, the enemy of creation. It's the Me Too entity, the Borg hive mind, that wants to assimilate all the eyeballs and make them see what it wants them to see. This is how a hive mind works. The hive mind queen uses, in physical terms, hive species. In hive species, the queen has specific chemicals, pheromones and so forth, that it uses to control the minds of its hive. It sends them out with programming that says, we're hungry, we need food. Go look for food. So all the ants go searching for food, and then signal to the other drones, oh, there's food here. And the drones all go try to cart as much of it as they can back to the queen. Hoping, I guess, that they will eventually get to eat some of it. Now, if you watch ants closely, some of them will kind of cheat a little bit and they'll eat some of the food and not be rushing back so quickly to the queen. So even amongst beasts, there is a desire to buck the programming of the hive mind. And this is the struggle of all creation. It's a struggle between, you know, this is what looks like the best thing to me, and this is what they tell me is the best thing for me, but doesn't seem like it's the best. And this struggle, this power struggle between the individual and the group and the collective, is what drives all of creation. And it's not this side is good or this side is bad. If either side gets all the power, it's a bad thing. It's a balance of power that actually keeps things running. Case in point, some people think, oh, if we just had democracy, if the people just decided everything would be perfect. Well, anybody who knows anything about democracy knows that when that was tried in ancient Athens, probably tried before that, we just don't have records of it, but that was the first recorded democracy. That's where the word came from. It was a miserable failure. Now, it really wasn't a democracy because only property-owning male citizens had the right to vote in the assembly. But even with that restriction, what happened is that the best speakers, the best funded speakers amongst the elite, used their power and influence and money to buy the votes of everybody else or convince them their pet project was a good idea, and basically created what were called demagogues. Little fake Democrat gods who used and manipulated people to get their votes, to get the power in a democracy. And this is what created what was known as the rule of the mob. And that is what a pure democracy devolves into. Anybody who knows anything about the French Revolution knows that it was absolute chaos. People were beheaded every day by guillotine under the whims of whoever they thought should be the enemy. And basically they beheaded, they guillotined all of the leaders of their revolution. And that's what communist revolutions do. Anybody who thinks that they're going to make anything better by having a popular democratic revolution, socialist revolution, communist revolution, is a fool, is an absolute idiot. They are being what we call a useful idiot, because they are being propagandized and used through hive mind media to basically become the stupid foot soldiers of the hive queens, the rich and powerful that control media, control big tech. And these are not monolithic forces, by the way. These are competing hive minds. There is one hive mind whose center is the Chinese Communist Party. There's another hive mind whose center is the World Economic Forum. There are hive minds that are kind of the center of major countries that have their own nationalist agenda. And sometimes they work together, sometimes they conspire, and sometimes they don't. And what we are facing right now is another cycle of these hive mind powers running up against each other. Now, if you've ever watched hive mind species, if you've ever watched bees or ants doing what they do, you'll think, wow, this is a great system, until you see them come across another hive that's not related to the parent hive. And you see them come into competition for resources. And then you get an education about the dark side of communism. The dark side of identity politics. Because that's when you see competing hives going to war against each other, committing mutual suicide sometimes. In many cases, when two hives are fighting, they will actually take out each other's queens and end up with no way to reproduce, leaving both their territories barren for some other hive to step into. And this ties in with the other part of the song, is this promise of there are other starfish in the sea. Well, there are other stars in the heavens. And one of the Deus ex machina solutions that many would like to point to in our dark times is that, well, yeah, we're competing for resources, we're killing our planet with pollution and environmental damage, but we can go to other planets and other star systems and just move on, as it were. What I find funny in all this is that if you do get off the Earth, you develop the technology to get to the moon, to get to Mars, to get to other stars that have habitable planets. What's to stop the problem from continuing? At what point does a species become useful and helpful and constructive versus just being a virus, a cancer that spreads till it's got nothing left to consume. This is what diseases do. And this is one of the challenges of the whole human problem right now, is a lot of people aren't sure whether we're a disease or a cure. And this is why we need some kind of spirituality. This is why we need a healthy religion. Most religions that have worked for any length of time were relatively healthy, even though they were sort of like a hive mind. If you think of any of the religions of the world, they maintained their health by enforcing their dogma. And when that dogma was threatened, it led to some pretty dark times of war and conflict and genocide, extermination. And this applies to all religions. There was a time where Hinduism was very much at odds with Buddhism. And you find in Southeast Asia many Buddhist temples that were converted to Hindu temples. Now that was not a peaceful process, I promise you. The same thing with the conflict between Hinduism and Islam, between Islam and Christianity. To an outside observer, these all look like different hive minds competing for resources and power, using religion as a motivator of the masses, as a form of spiritual communism, spiritual democracy, if you will. Although it's not really democracy when it's based on dogma. And this is the danger of, the so-called Democrats of today. A real democracy, by nature, must be very free speech purist, free thought purist, must encourage people to express their thoughts, have them discussed in open debate, and accept that not everybody's going to agree. And require that, okay, you can disagree, you can agree to disagree, you can call each other names, but you can't kill each other. You can't silence each other. You can't tyrannize each other. That goes against the principles of a functional democracy. And that's the difference between the kind of democracy that neo-democrats think they want and the kind of democracy that actually works, or could work if we just made a better version of it. The constitutional democracy of the United States Republic was a pretty good stab at the right way to make a government. It had flaws. Why? Because it was made by flawed individuals. Many people in the Constitutional Congress would not sign, would not support the Constitution unless things were removed from it. Words were changed. Thomas Jefferson didn't get everything he wanted into the Constitution. If he had, perhaps the history of our country would have been less violent. Although, not every idea Jefferson had was necessarily a good idea. Some of the framers of the Constitution were statists. They thought if we had all the power in the hands of the best people, everything would be perfect. That's a hive mind. That doesn't work. Others were proponents of distributed power, and they fought for states' rights, especially those who represented smaller, less populous states who knew that, if this place was run like a pure democracy, our state would have no votes. Our state would have no say. The populous states where the big cities are, which at that time were New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Georgia, Florida, they would have had all the say. And the less populous states, the less developed states, would have basically been lorded over and exploited by those states that had all the votes. That's why the U.S. Constitution was set up the way it was. Now, that was a flawed proposition because now we have a different distribution of population, and the states mostly have their own urban centers, and those urban centers are now facing this problem again of, well, because we've got all the people, we think we should make all the rules, and we should control everybody that's in the less developed areas, and they should just serve us and do whatever we say, bring us all the goods from the farms and from the ports at almost no cost to serve the people that really deserve everything, who are this corporate elite, who, the pampered corporate elite of the world's globalist elite. That's the new hive mind we're dealing with. It's an amoral and a religious hive mind that's basically bought into social Darwinism. Might makes right. We have the most power, therefore we must be the best people and get to make all the laws. That's how these folks think. And they justify that, they rationalize that with narratives like global warming, which I'm not going to get into now, but anybody who studies it knows just what nonsense the mainstream narrative is there. In fact, what we've done with globalism is we've outsourced all the environmental damage, all the pollution to China. And then we create more by transporting things back and forth by container ship, sometimes 10 times to make a finished product. This is the truth. You design new smartphones in Cupertino, Apple's capital. You prototype there, and then you ship off the design to China or to several other countries to do sub-assemblies, to do the chips and stuff like that. Then they ship from there to China to assemble it all. Then you ship it off to where it needs to go to be distributed or tested and so forth. It's incredibly inefficient. And this kind of inefficiency is what is driving the misuse of resources. And especially, the outsourcing of the production of very environmentally damaging things we need, rare earth metals, to China is horrible. I've lived in China, so I've seen it firsthand. There are places you can go in China where the air is lethal, where people are dying in their early 20s if they don't get out of there, because they're breathing toxic air, they're eating toxic food day in and day out. And it's not because of carbon dioxide. It's not because of global warming. It's because of the side effects of producing lithium, cobalt, germanium, gallium. All of these things that we need to make all of the things that we want, that the globalist marketing engine has told us we want and we have to have if we're going to survive. Bullshit. With a catalytic converter on it, a gas-powered vehicle is far lower environmental footprint than an EV. This is truth. You can look it up. You can do the research yourself. Electricity is not for free. And you know who's the biggest consumer of electricity? China. And you know how they still get most of their electricity? Coal-fired plants. The most polluting way to generate electricity. Oh, well, you say, well, there's green energy, there's wind power and solar power. Okay, wind power requires wind turbines, requires the electronics to collect the energy that's pulled from the air and store it and send it elsewhere. That doesn't come for free. That all requires a whole bunch of nasty chemicals and chemical processing that causes environmental damage. Hydroelectric dams, now that was a pretty good idea, as long as they're built to withstand earthquakes or other natural disasters, which we know eventually happen. I've actually experienced a dam failure firsthand when I was a child. There's a dam up above Idaho Falls, the Teton Dam, that failed when I was a teenager, I think. And it didn't affect me, but the lower areas of the town I lived in were flooded, and some people carried away with it. And that was a relatively small dam. You've got the world's biggest dam, I think, at this point, the Three Gorges Dam in China, that basically holds back enough water that if it was released all at once, would wipe out, some estimates are maybe 500 million people. And that dam was built by a regime that is totally corrupt from top to bottom. That is the worst example of a hive mind our species has ever produced, where, you know, the pampered dictator at the top is fed a bunch of shit. They do what Xi Jinping says, but only to the extent that they can fool him. And everybody knows within China that the only way to really succeed there is to get in a position of power, steal as much as you can through corruption, and money launder it to somewhere where you can get away with your money and as much of your family as you can before the Chinese Communist Party comes after you. Because they have the goods on everybody. They're watching everybody. They'll let you do anything in China. So they got the goods on you whenever they need to attack you or manipulate you, turn you into an asset. That's how a hive mind works in human terms. And it's ugly. It is really ugly, and that ugliness has been spreading to the rest of the world because you've got a bunch of stupid elites who see what's going on in China and say, wow, wouldn't it be great here if we could make it work like that and we could do anything we wanted without having to worry about voting for it or getting the approval of people. We'll just give them a line of shit, tell them how great it is for them, and force it on them. And that's what they're doing with this climate change nonsense, which is only one piece of a much bigger nonsense that they actually call in their documentation the Great Reset. They're not being secretive about it at all, nor about their goal of reducing the surplus population to, I think the goal is for 2050, 500 million people from what I think right now is roughly about 9 billion people. Now that's going to take a lot of pain and suffering and hurt. And a lot of innocent people are going to die. A lot of children. A lot of children won't be born because of what's already been done. It's not looking pretty. And I guess the hope I want to give you is that it is what's going on here is essentially purgatory. This realm, the physical universe, is a place of testing souls, and souls are units of consciousness, ideas. A human incarnated soul represents the idea of that individual's mission, what they want to accomplish, what their aspirations are, what's most important to them. And some of those ideas are pretty dark. Some of them are consciously dark, selfishly dark, irresponsibly dark. And that is a choice you can make here in this testing environment. It's a choice that marks you as a beast, or only worthy of being a beast. And this ties in with the events of the day. If you look at Hamas, if you look at the anti-Hamas terrorists, the people who, were getting ready on Friday the 13th by buying extra ammo and making sure to carry their guns with them in case they got a chance to get the bad guys. These are beastly souls looking for a fight, seeking the adrenaline rush of getting to wipe out your enemies. Now that's not going to go away overnight. The event we're going through is not going to be an end to war. It's going to be an end of a day of creation, a day of testing. Okay, if you've ever dealt with the generation, the full product life cycle of some complex creation, you know that there's a lot of work that has to be done after the product is released. Okay, it's all tested and, well, there's still a few bugs, but I think there's enough that we can release it and send it out of the lab, maybe deliver some early versions of it to the most trusted customers. And we know we're going to get more defects. We're going to have to do some more bug fixing. We're going to get competitive reactions to our product by our adversaries, and we're going to have to deal with those. This is how creation works. Everywhere, all over the multiverse. This is how creation has always worked. Since the first soul. In fact, the first soul, the first unit of consciousness, was the one that figured out how to set up an engine of creation that didn't seize up or explode. This is creation, and it's not been perfect. It's been trial and error. And there have been many versions of the God phone. Many, many more versions than of the iPhone. You can think of God as the original iPhone, who didn't do it the human way, who didn't try to control what you see, what you do, monitor your every move, and basically program you through your programming device. That's what dark gods do. That's what the adversary does. God is not an entity of power and control. He's not an almighty micromanaging controller of everything that demands slavish worship. That's the adversary. That's the Borg. Now, Borg is a controlled opposition adversary. And that's where we need to talk about how this game works. It is a game. It's a creation game. It's a learning game. Borg, the adversary, was created to basically handle all the NPCs. If you've ever played a role-playing game, you know that a role-playing game has you and maybe others online as the player characters that have free will, free choice, and has non-player characters that run basically on some sort of an AI program. They try to behave like player characters, so if you're the only one online, it will seem like, okay, I'm playing against these non-player characters. I'm fighting the boss battles and stuff against them, maybe even having some of them working on my side, and it's a fun, entertaining experience if the game designer has done a good job. That's exactly what God designed. Not all by himself, certainly didn't implement it all by himself, had the ideas, the thoughts. Thoughts create reality. We're proving this again by making the metaverse, which is a reality that's so real we can't tell the difference. If we've done it right, we can't tell the difference between that and, quote, physical reality. All you're doing there is repeating what God has already done, has already been working on for billions of years, testing new features through trial and error. And this is what I talk about in my channel. This is how this all ties back. And what I am here to tell you is that this synchronicity of the red rubber ball is an important one for our time. The red sun is a sign, and we will see it many times. It will be a part of this planet's destruction at some point or another. That's inevitable. Ask any scientist that knows what the future of our star is. Given its mass, what laws it operates under. That star has laws that it has to obey now. That's how the physical universe works. That's what makes it a purgatory, a place of testing, because it's really difficult to live within all these rules of physics and chemistry. It's difficult to live in a soul vehicle that only lives an average of about 70 or 80 years. It's hard to accomplish something meaningful in that amount of time. And if you do, without stepping all over a bunch of other souls, that's worthy of a reward. And that's what the Messiah system is all about. every soul has the opportunity to become a god of their own specialty. Not the god, not, I'm a piece of God, I have everything, every bit of knowledge inside of me. That's nonsense. That's foolish, stupid Borg nonsense. The Borg's knowledge, this hive mind that wants to assimilate every soul, who is recruiting all the time through psychedelics and near-death experiences by giving you this light. Oh, I want to go to the light. I want to go to the love and be one with everything. This is a psyop. This is a spiritual psyop. The Borg wants to assimilate you and turn you back into a non-player character, taking your knowledge and adding it to the Akashic Records. Well, let me tell you, the Akashic Records is not all knowledge like the neo-Buddhists are telling you. It's all NPC knowledge, the knowledge of souls that have given up on their own creations, who have decided, you know what, I can't create anything independent. Everything I do is worthless. I just want to give up and stop playing the game. Okay, that's an option. That's how wonderful this system is. You even have the ability to choose not to play the game and just give up, throw in the towel. If you do, you need to understand what you're doing there. You're committing soulicide. Soulicide, that's a good new word for you. It's like suicide, only suicide just ends one incarnation. Soulicide ends all your incarnations, takes all your past lives away, erases your Merkaba after copying it to the Akashic Records, so it can be used, reused, to generate new NPCs. So your entity, your you, can be cloned anywhere Borg wants to have an NPC that it can control. Now you would think that that would give the adversary pretty much unlimited power. Well, you'd be wrong. If you've ever watched masters playing a video game, you'll know that there are players who are so creative, so innovative, that no matter how you tweak the AI, they will find a way around it. You can look for that right now. It's already happening with ChatGPT. There are people that are finding holes in ChatGPT that they can use to program, and doing funny things like getting ChatGPT to have the personality of Donald Trump. And you can do this with NPCs. You can do this with lower consciousness characters, because they're not the smartest souls in the shed. The people that are telling you, oh, oneness is all. We just need to surrender and become one, or just put up with whatever's going on in your life because you get to return to source. I'm sorry, they are telling you a lie. It may be a lie that makes you feel good and comfortable, and you're perfectly okay if you want to follow that lie and go with the flow. It's popular. Must be right. But I can promise you it's not the truth. Now, there are some universes that are modeled on Borg lines that are better than others, because the Borg universe is like the abyss that mystics talk about. The abyss, nirvana, this place that has no individuality, no program, you just kind of sitting in there in a soup of infinite meditating oneness. That's like the original Borg. Okay, you're just waiting there for your number to be drawn randomly out of a hat to occupy a hole where an NPC is needed. That's essentially where you're at with nirvana. It's not a horrible place. There are much worse places, much worse hive minds, because some of the souls that have advanced to God level do so because they want to be like Borg, but they want to have control. They want to use the spiritual energy that's attracted to them, focused to their own purpose. And these are the dark gods and goddesses of power. They're trying to attract, these are the demons who are trying to attract you to their universe or their master's universe so that they can basically milk your spiritual energy to generate power to fight other gods who they perceive as their enemies. This is the deeper truth, the spiritual truth behind the message of the movie The Matrix. It's not human entities that are behind the simulation. It's a range of simulations, some of which are quite heavenly, and some of which are as hellish, maybe even more hellish, than what's depicted in The Matrix. And others that are like purgatories, where you're tested. And the program for testing maybe has an idea to help you better yourself, to expose your weaknesses and grow. That's what this universe is all about. This physical universe, at least the prime one, there are parallel universes that are operated on the same lines and might have slightly different rules, a slightly different owner, but the prime universe is the physical universe of testing, where the laws of physics and chemistry were developed and are now enforced, where the law of karma was developed and is now enforced in the transmigration of souls between universes. It's not meant to be easy, because we have to make sure that we don't let narcissistic, megalomaniac souls into the universes where people have earned their reward and the ability to focus on their higher passions. There are universes where you don't have to worry about eating. You don't have to worry about filling up your car. All you have to worry about is, am I worthy of being in this universe still? And depending on what the universe is, your worth is shown by creating works of art, admiring others' works of art, working together to make better works of art through the combination of ideas, science, music, whatever. All of these wonderful things that we know inherently are what is valuable of humanity. Life is not valuable in and of itself. It's just another disease, just another cancer. What separates a God-level species from a beast species is being able to create beautiful things, to create lasting beauty, to pass down beautiful ideas from one generation to another. This is the core difference between Homo sapiens and all of the animal species on our planet, all of the inorganic species on our planet. Maybe not all. elementals do exist. The jinn of Islamic legend are real. They don't interact that much with us anymore because the ones that don't appreciate karma have been banished elsewhere. That's what we do with dark souls. That's what we're in the process of doing now. Why are there still dark souls around? Why do we still have Hitlers and Xi Jinpings and Vladimir Putins and Emmanuel Macrons and Justin Trudeau's and Donald Trump's and Hillary Clinton's and all of these power mad megalomaniacs? In the corporate world too, the Jeff Bezoses, the Bull Goats, etc. Why are these dark souls still here? Because we've been testing. In order to test something, you have to cover all the possible test cases. If you're testing a government for souls, you've got to test good souls and bad souls with every sort of virtue and every sort of vice. And those tests need to continue until the bug fixing is done. That's what we've been doing all of day 7 of creation. It hasn't been a day of rest. It's been a day of testing. What made that day of testing so special is that even God himself was being tested. This is how the Messiah system works. This is the difference between a capital M Messiah and a little m Messiah. Every soul has a chance to be a little m Messiah. There can be only one capital M Messiah. A new, improved version of God. Now, how is that version defined and how does it drive all of the others? This is where we tie into string theory. Okay, every soul is a unit of consciousness. Consciousness is basically a 12-dimensional string. Now, it's hard to understand 12-dimensional strings. So think of a 2-dimensional string. It vibrates. It's got a midpoint that if you hold the midpoint down and you play one side, creates an octave higher than the bass vibration that's defined by the full length of the string. Okay, one of the important dimensions of a soul string is time. When a new soul is created, it already has a predefined timeline. It can riff around that timeline during the time that it's allotted, but that timeline must be obeyed. The timeline is defined by a midpoint, not by the beginning or the end. The midpoint. A midpoint defines the beginning and the end. But you don't discover either until you live the middle life. The middle incarnation of a soul is what's most important. We're always working. This is why so many religions emphasize the present, because the present incarnation, the present moment, is always the most important. It drives the past and the future. This is how quantum time works. This is the deeper truth that string theorists are trying to wrap their heads around, not understanding that you're never going to have a grand unified theory of everything, even based on string theory, unless it has a spiritual component. Because it is the God string that drives everything else. The first conscious thought that created the idea of a multiverse, of all other creations, of all other thoughts, that's the most important one. If that string gets cut, that's it. That's like God committing solicide. Okay? That's not going to happen. It's already working too well. What God's been working on since the first successful Big Bang is the first successful Gaia experiment. What is the Gaia experiment? It is making all of the successive chosen species to generate all of the successive chosen gods and chosen key other souls in the pattern of creation. So as I tell you, there are 5 primary souls that create the patterns of all creation. God is one. Karma is the second most important one. Then you've got the crash test dummies, Lucifer and Lilith, who play with, Lucifer plays with reality. Testing, Lucifer wants to find the perfect set of rules to govern everything. Okay, and you've met people like that. This is the ultimate scientist that thinks if I could just make enough laws, if I could just prove enough theories, I could predict everything and everything would run according to clockwork. And okay, this is madness. One kind of madness. Lilithian madness is the other. The Lilithian mindset is, we shouldn't have any rules. Whatever you want, just make it up as you go along. I create everything with my mind. Blah, 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 blah. You know, the law of attraction nonsense. This is another form of madness, because if you create something, you're going to be manipulating other things that don't want to be manipulated by you. Okay? You can't just do whatever you want without stepping on everybody else's other soul's toes, which is bad karma. These 2 forms of madness are essentially the poles of the, quote, divine male and divine female that most people who are motivated by sex think they need to be after. These are the dark sides of being male and female. A well-adjusted soul has elements of both personality types and understands that balancing them is where it's at. God is the real divine male. Karma is the real divine female. Lucifer and Lilith are the fallen children who did some really great experimental work and learned a lot, and they're really great souls in their best versions now, but their worst versions are basically servants of the adversary, the 5th soul, the Borg, the hive mind, recycler, generator of non-player characters. If you keep pursuing a Luciferian or a Lilithian narrow focus in your beliefs, in your worldview, you will end up in the Borg abyss. Either by choice, because you'll be so disgusted when you have your life review with the choices that you have made that you'll just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Please, please, Mr. Wizard, take me back to the light. Or you'll mend your ways. There's no two ways about it. It's dark, ugly stuff when you start thinking that your fantasies are more important than anybody else's. That's the Lilithian viewpoint. I create with my mind the law of attraction. I can make whatever I want happen because I have the power. Or if you pursue the Luciferian route of, I deserve the power because I grabbed it. I took the system that was there and I abused it and used it and turned it to my advantage. How many of the globalist meritocracy think like that? The CEO set, the multi-generational political families that run most countries. They think they're entitled to it because they somehow know better than anybody else what the laws of the universe are. They're Luciferian. Those aren't the good guys. They may get all the perks here. They may seem like they're winning. They, you know, especially frustrating are some of these numby-gumby so-called spiritual gurus preaching this law of attraction nonsense and making a whole bunch of money off of useful idiots who think that, you know, they can subscribe to their mail order program and suddenly all the riches of the world are going to come running toward them. That's not how it works, folks. You are being played like fiddles by these dark strings. They're not going anywhere great. Most of these souls that you see around you being very successful in one way or another are actually very, very close to NPCs themselves. Newborn souls that just don't know any better. They're here to test us because this is what the apocalypse is all about. We're heading towards a major version of karma and God being released. Actually, all of the key souls of creation are getting a chance to have a new version with this. This is what makes the apocalypse so scary and so special. It is an opportunity for every idea, every law, every rule, every definition in every encyclopedia to change. If it can prove itself worthy of change. If it can't, off to Borg it goes for recycling to become another bad idea. It's a sorting mechanism. What happens when things go to Borg? When an idea goes to Borg? It gets regurgitated as NPCs that challenge the ideas that are still outstanding. And there's a lot of outstanding ideas being evaluated in our species right now. That's why we have so much angst around AI, around virtual reality, around do we fix this planet or do we just focus on getting to another planet? It's all part of the process. It's stuff you should be working on if you're passionate to work on it. It's stuff you should be working on with an awareness of karma. Because it's not about your personal success anymore. If you're one of these souls still here, actively engaged in any aspect of this spiritual battle, and spiritual battles are technological battles. There is no separation between spiritual science and physical science. It's a continuum. And if you don't accept that truth, you've already lost the battle. If you're stuck in a materialist scientism viewpoint, you're playing for the adversary already. You're an NPC that may think that they're on the forefront of intellectual development in humanity, but you're just holding everybody else back. with your degrees and your papers and your reputation and your presence on YouTube, being invited to speak here and there and there and there. Fuck you. You are in the way. You are NPC furniture getting in the way of what this species is really doing here. If your mind is that closed that you are not willing to admit of the possibility of any spiritual experience you haven't experienced personally. And there's a lot of other folks in that camp who are very popular and sought after, the Michio Kakus, who have accepted some spirituality, but they're embracing this cosmic oneness nonsense. And you know who you are, and you're very popular because of it, because it's a very attractive thing to think, I'm God, just having an individual masturbation fantasy in his body, and when I finish with that, I'm going to go back to Source and I'm going to have access to all unlimited information and be where there's unconditional love and everything's perfect, blah, 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 blah. You folks are NPCs. I'm sorry. You may think you're very intelligent. You may think that you're moving the boundaries of science, but you are standing in the way. It is folks like Michio Kaku that have prevented string theory from getting past 11 dimensions. I'm telling you, string theory doesn't mean anything until you know what the first 12 dimensions are all about. Once you understand the first 12 dimensions, then every dimension beyond that is just kind of a postal code. Because the first 12 dimensions define the dimensions of the original Big Bang duoverse. It's actually a trioverse because the universe, the anti-universe, is bounded by the multiverse, which is the highest heaven, the original place of pure thought that God began experimenting within. That's the original Trinity. That's where the Trinity pattern came from. And we know that that is a very useful pattern. The pattern of duality comes from not understanding that there's a higher heaven. And the conflict between Luciferian and Lilithian thinking. Only when you balance them within the framework of the multiverse do they make any sense. Do they ever resolve into anything but endless conflict between imagination and provable reality? At any rate, I think that's been a pretty good talk, and I thank the person who posted that question on Quora for posting it. I thank the entities that wouldn't let me answer the question the way I wanted to the first time, even though I lost about roughly half an hour worth of wordsmithing. And maybe somebody won't see the message just from Quora. At least maybe they'll come and look at my channel. These things always work out. Everything happens for a reason. Because the God string was tested, designed and tested first. This is, let's end with this idea of, we start with an idea of our existence. A proposed string that has a midpoint. What we do with that midpoint, that incarnation, defines how close we came to the plan. God's plans have already been tested with non-player characters. That's why Borg exists. Because in God's highest heaven, God can make anything. Pull a bunch of NPCs that are programmed to do what they're supposed to do, and let's see where this experiment goes. Okay, that becomes, when it satisfies God, becomes the template for the next day of creation. And then it's a matter of saying, well, okay, Lucifer, I need your specialty now. You test this, Lucifer, and you challenge it, Lilith, with crazy, weird ideas that maybe I didn't think of. And let's see if you can converge on the same midpoint. And that will be proof that this is that better version, even though we don't necessarily see the beginning or the end. We have to go discover it. That's what I'm so excited about. I'm going to tell you about one of the visions that I haven't shared with anybody yet of my future. I'm going to get to explore both the past and the future to see the truth of how it all happened. And that actually will lead up to a plug for my next segment. If something else doesn't come up, I was going to next speak about the history of Egypt, which is something that we've been finding, many people have been finding quite interesting and having a lot of different ideas about. From, you know, the academic accepted idea of Egyptologists that the dynastic Egypt was all there was, and they created the pyramids and blah 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 and all of the technology that we see, and another group of new scientists that are saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. If you pull in other specialties besides that of Egyptologists and archaeologists, you pull in some geologists and structural engineers, mechanical engineers, hydrologists, and all of the other things that we need to understand the world around us today. Try to understand the world of the Egyptians. A lot of things just don't add up. At any rate, that's what we're going to talk about next time, God willing. Till then, like, share, subscribe, and tune in again to the Omnist Hour. Happy Karma.